and welcome to season 3 of my podcast. Today, my guest is Shilpashree Jagannath, my aunt, who is a Bangalore based freelance journalist, a corporate investigator, and a change maker. She has worked for newspapers such as Financial Express and Mint, the Indian partner of the Wall Street Journal when it launched. Hi Shilpa, welcome to my show.
Vedant, thank you for having me here. I'm excited for two reasons. Can I tell you why?
Yeah, sure.
One, because I'm just on your show, that itself is very exciting. And secondly, this is the first time I'm being interviewed. All my life, I have interviewed others.
I'm glad that you're excited.
Thank you.
Even I am.
Yes.
Every morning, the newspaper comes to our house. I'm curious to know how a newspaper company gathers all the news and puts it into a few sheets of paper.
There are many sources to gather news. Okay. Firstly, all newspaper companies hire some people known as reporters. I was a reporter as well. People like us, we go out, meet people, talk to them. We also talk to people on phone. There are also times when people we talk to regularly also who share information with us. So these kind of news, these kind of information, sometimes when there is a new development, becomes news. So there are reporters like me who file what is known as a copy. Like they write the article and if we file the copy. So we are one of the biggest source of news for a newspaper. And secondly, there's also something known as news agencies. There's something like a PTI, ANI, Reuters, and Bloomberg. These are all news agencies. These are all agencies which again have reporters like us who they send out and gather information, come and file the copy for them, and they send it out to newspaper companies, and the companies use these information. Also, another source of information is something known as a press release or a media release. Government bodies, companies, NGOs, they all come up with something known as press release. That is, something has happened in their company or organization. They would like the world to know. So they write about it and send it out to reporters like us or even newspaper organizations. So that also becomes another source of news. So on a daily basis, a newspaper company has news coming from news reports being filed by the reporters, news reports coming from newspaper agencies, as well as press releases, which become the most important source of news. They sit, discuss what is important, and prioritize what news goes where, and then put it all in on newspapers, as in on the sheets, and then send it out for print. And that's how you get your newspaper.
That's very interesting because each day for the newspaper, this big process needs to be done and we just read it. That's it. So it's very interesting. The world is such a huge place and there are so many things happening everywhere. How do you decide what gets printed and what does not?
Okay, that's an interesting question. How do we decide what gets printed and what is not? So, if before we get into what gets printed and what doesn't, it's important to understand many types of newspapers. Two most important newspapers, like a general newspaper, like you have the Times of India, and like a business paper like the Economic Times. Most of the business news will go into Economic Times. That's important. Okay. So that by itself becomes a deciding factor. What kind of news goes into what kind of paper? That sort of funnels it out a little bit. And then we need to decide what becomes a headline. Do you understand headline, Vedant?
Yeah, it's the main article and the biggest article of the day.
Yes. So it's like on the front page of a newspaper, the most important, the first article. That is your headline. So what what decides what goes as a headline? One, that piece of information should affect large number of people. I'm trying to give you an example that affects a large number of people. Okay, let's say Prime Minister Modi, he took second dose of vaccination. It became an important news. Why is it important? Because people of the country want to know if our Prime Minister took vaccination or not. Okay, and if he has taken a vaccination, we would like to know what kind of vaccination he has taken. Because we all sort of want to vaccinate ourselves. We want to look, many people sort of want to know what is the Prime Minister doing for the people of country. So, which is why him taking vaccination becomes an important news. Right?
Yeah, and it also like encourages other people and it also makes sure that it's safe.
Exactly. So to decide what is an important news, you need to understand that first thing that what we try to answer is how many people are affected by this information. The more the number of people affected, then automatically it becomes important news. All I want you to understand is what becomes important is when we know that a particular piece of information affects a lot of people. That is the biggest deciding factor as to what is important.
And also, like example, when the COVID vaccine was made, the first one, that was important.
COVID itself is a global news. Any kind of development about the pandemic, all over the world, people are reading.
We get breaking news alerts every now and then, the moment something happens. How do journalists know about events so quickly?
Where do you get your breaking news alert, Vedant, if I may ask?
On the phone or like the TV?
On the phone, it comes because you have news aggregators who send out the news. There are many apps which give you news. So they send out the news. Now, these news, these kind of news articles are again gathered from media organization. You either have a TV organization or a newspaper organization. Okay. And media organization, you have reporters like me who are working day in and day out. Okay. How do we work? We have our own network of people that we almost talk to on a daily basis. So now these people, that is a network of people that we talk to on a daily basis, they do let us know that if there is some development or some piece of information that needs to be shared, they will let us know, hey, listen, this has happened. Do you think this will be of importance? And then reporters like me are always on the lookout for news. Okay. So we're all excited when someone lets us know that there is a development. And then we'll go to our editor or bosses and say, listen, there's been a development. I think this needs to go as a breaking news. And when once that happens, we push out the news as breaking news. And other than that, again, you have your agencies, news agencies, which file reports constantly throughout the day. They keep filing. Even that becomes, they also have breaking news. So those also become breaking news. Okay. And breaking news happens because we have, people in various places who can give us these news, who will let us know when there's a development or something new to be told.
So when you find out that there's a new development or something, do you quickly go to the news agency, the office, and tell the editor or something, or do you just telephone?
Either ways is okay. If I'm in office and I get this news, I immediately walk into my boss's cabin and say, listen, this has happened. Or if I'm out somewhere and someone gives me some kind of an information, I immediately call my boss and say, listen, there's a development, we need to break this.
There are different sections in the newspaper. Are there different kinds of journalists to cover different types of news?
Yes. There are different types of journalists who track different sectors or different beats. So in the journalism world, different topics and different subjects are called as beats. Like I was a business reporter. Okay. So even among business reporters, there are specializations. But among the general reporters, you have people covering politics, people covering crime, And you also have environment reporters. Environment beat is a big beat that is coming up now. You have page three reporters, that is the entertainment reporters. And you also have a lot, in a general newspaper, also, you have business reporters. Now, in a business paper, you have different teams again. You have someone who tracks banking as a sector. They only look at banking companies, banks, like your ICICI, Axis, and things like that. Then you have stock market reporters. And then you have corporate reporters. I was a corporate reporter. I used to look at telecom beats. I used to look at infrastructure beats, as in the companies in telecom sector and infrastructure sector and things like that. And there are also many something known as feature writers. They write long form stories, which are very beautifully written often, and they're very interesting pieces of articles which are not like hardcore news, but they're very like, let's say it's a Sunday laid back reading. You can aram se sit and read at home on a weekend. So that's also something. That's another specialization. Feature writing is another specialization.
I have heard that nowadays there are a lot of fake or false news that circulates. How do we know what is correct news and what is fake?
Oh, this is the next. This, other than COVID, this is another pandemic that the world is facing today, Vedant. It is a big concern. It should worry all of us that the amount of fake news that goes around is mind-boggling. It's like crazy. So I'm not a person who consumes fake news. In fact, I try and verify facts even for people around me. Now, to sort of make sure the fake news is busted, there are many fact-checking companies which have come up. You have Alt News, you have Boom Facts. Many of these newspapers themselves have begun doing fact-checking, in the sense that itself becomes one whole department of people working on it, sitting and working on it, trying to make sure the fake news doesn't go travel along. They try and ensure that they try and correct these facts. So ideally, journalists should be doing these fact checking at their own end. Otherwise, also there are other departments in a newspaper organization who should be correcting errors and fact, looking out for wrong facts. But unfortunately, it's become such a hurriedly done job that people don't care to check for facts, and many a times things go out as fake news. So ideally, reporters should do it, but that's not happening, which is why you have a whole host of organization. All that they sit and do on a daily basis is check for fake news and correct them and put out a story saying, listen, this is something that was doing rounds, and this is wrong, and this is how it should be. This is the real fact. The way I sort of check on fake news, any news that comes to me, whether it is fake or not, is to look for these sources to see if they have put out any kind of an article saying that this news is fake, this news isn't. Then if that doesn't happen, some many times you just use your common sense before you do that also. You just think yourself, is this possible, does this happen? Many times even people don't even think like that, they just blindly believe it. So I first think like that, and then go checking for facts on Boom Facts, on fake on these fake news alert websites. Or even if they haven't filed it, I try and see the article that I'm checking for facts. I try and ask them if I try and see where is the source. Where is this article getting its piece of information from? So I go to the respective websites to see if they've made any announcement. Many times these organizations also don't make an announcement. Someone in between is writing something, attributing it to that organization. So if an organization like that hasn't made any announcement, then definitely it's a fake news. So I flag it off. Wherever I find fake news, I try and flag it off saying this is false and things like that. So there's a whole host of things you can do to verify the facts.
Yeah. If if I take up journalism, I'll make sure to remember what you said and follow it.
I'm sure you'll teach me more. By the time you grow up to be a journalist, there will be many more things that has come around.
And also, me and my listeners promise that we will also check in the news whether it's fake or not.
Yes, that I think my day is done, Vedant. Thank you so much. This is very important. All of you should do.
What made you choose to be a journalist?
Okay. So when did I decide to become a journalist? I was around 16, 17. I chose to be a journalist. This was around the time I was in 11th or 12th grade. When I chose journalism, I did not realize the amount of studies I had to do to be a good journalist. But I have no regrets. I enjoy being a journalist. So when I chose journalism, I wanted to change the world. I was not okay with the kind of injustice that was happening in the world. I said, if I become a journalist, I can highlight the injustices. And based on the kind of highlights I do, people who read my articles will immediately see that it is an injustice and rise up, and they will fight for changing this. Basically, my whole reason for joining journalism was to change the world.
You are also a change fellow at change.org. Can you tell me a little about this?
By being a change fellow or a change maker, what I really mean is it is a countrywide community of 150 women or anyone who identifies themselves as women. So we are about 150 people working on women and child development initiatives across India. Okay, so by being a change maker, what we really do is, I remember I told you that I wanted to change the world. That's why I became a journalist. So after becoming a journalist, I really felt I began realizing that change is very difficult to come through. And at some stage, I gave up the idea of changing the world. But then change.org happened and I became a change maker, and I realized although changing things is very difficult to do, but it is not impossible. So we had about 150 women working across the country on many of the women and child development initiatives where we spot inequalities and sort of work with many people, like including government authorities, NGOs, people on the ground, and we work with them and sort of figure out a way to change things that are happening wrong. So that is what it means to be a change maker. Like Abhiram says, you don't like something, Mama, you just change and you become a change maker.
I'm really inspired, and I hope you do well making change to the world.
Thank you so much, Vedant. All of you are also change makers.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you, Vedant, for having me. It was super fun being here.
Yes, I know. It was also very fun. I mean, I didn't realize it took so much just to write news that and report on TV. I didn't realize it took so much.
Now that you know it.
Yes.
Sure.
Dear listeners, follow my Facebook page, Curious Vedanth, to get updates on my upcoming episodes. To listen at leisure on your phone and get notified about future episodes, subscribe by searching for Curious Vedanth wherever you get your podcasts, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can also listen to my show on curiousvedanth.com. Thank you for listening to Curious Vedanth, and don't forget to rate and leave comments.